Good evening and welcome to the Board of Education Candidates Forum. I'm Kim Cranston, Chief Communications Officer of the Rockwood School District, and on behalf of the district we welcome you tonight. We are extremely fortunate to have the League of Women Voters who are sponsoring and hosting this activity as they have done for several years in Rockwood, and we appreciate their service not only to Rockwood but to a number of different organizations and school districts in the county. So at this time I'd like to introduce Kathleen Farrell with the League to tell you how this evening will transpire. Kathleen.
Thank you. We were at Kirkwood last night, so I issue a challenge to you because they were a very lively group. So write really, really good questions, and when you're done, hold your hand up so that a League volunteer can come by. Okay, good evening. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and the Rockwood School District, I welcome you to this Candidates Forum. My name is Kathleen Farrell. I'm one of the co-presidents of the St. Louis League, and I will be your moderator for this evening. I'd like to thank the candidates for participating. They're all participating, and I think that's really important. 2 out of the 4 can be elected for a 3-year term for the Rockwood School District, and I'd like them to stand just so that you can see them, particularly people in the overflow room back there. So as I read your name, if you just stand, that would be terrific. Janet Strati, okay, Steve Banton, Laura Lee Mandel, okay, and Jeffrey Morrell. Okay, before I read the ground rules for this evening, I want to just thank a couple of people who worked very hard to make this happen. Julie Behrens and Anna Menerick in the League office, who this week we're not only running 11 candidate forums in 2 weeks, we're also trying to produce a voter's guide for 6 counties and the city. That's 868 candidates and 78 ballot initiatives, including your own Proposition S. So here we are doing this. Pat Jones, who's our candidate forum director, she's on television tonight covering the mayor's race in the city of St. Louis, and Gina Tart, who's from the Rockwood School District, who's been very helpful. And all of the committed members of the League of Women Voters who are here tonight, if you just raise your hands, because these are the folks who are going to pick up your cards. Eve Golden is our timekeeper. Mary Beth Reynolds, okay, she's back there looking at your questions. Marty Ott, Kay Winsine, Becky Clausen, Liz Arbach, and Dixie Buford. Now, the League's mission is to empower citizens to participate meaningfully in the democratic process. We really wanted to come out here tonight because we sort of noticed in the media that something was going on out here. So we really want you to ask the questions that you want to ask. And we believe that the best way to get good answers is to ask the candidates directly and let them answer your questions in a public forum. So let me review the rules for this evening. As I said, the candidates are seated in the order that their names appear on the ballot. They're going to give their opening statements in that order and their closing statements in the reverse order. Now, the candidates will each have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and they're going to have 1 minute apiece to answer every question. Everybody is going to have a right to speak to all questions, even if they're posed to an individual candidate. And finally, everybody will have 2 minutes for their closing statement. Now, here's your job, and a number of you have already done it. You need to write questions. They can be directed to one candidate or to the entire group on cards that have been provided for you. 1 question per card. Write questions that are of general interest and not about personal matters. The League believes that forums should cover issues, not personalities. Eve Golden, the timekeeper over there, and she's a tough woman, okay, will time all opening and closing statements and candidate answers to the questions. She'll signal 30 seconds with a yellow sign, and she'll tell you to stop with a red sign. And I'm going to read to the questions, the candidates, the questions submitted by you members of the audience. I'm going to retain the option to combine questions that are similar and address the same topic. And I'm going to make sure that every candidate has an equal opportunity to answer. Now, anybody can audio tape this or videotape it if you want to. The League of Women Voters and all of us reserve the right to ask, and I'm almost going to laugh when I say this, but I did the St. Louis City Mayoral Forum a couple of weeks ago, and I actually had to say this several times, that if you are seriously disruptive, we will take measures to make sure that you're not. So the League determines which questions will be asked and attempts in good faith to cover areas of interest provided by the audience. Now, we provide this service to everybody, and we do it free of cost. Nothing is more important, as we know, than the education of our children if our country is going to go forward. So that's what we want to talk about tonight. So let's begin with Janet Strati.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for attending tonight's candidate forum. My name is Janet Strati. My husband Matt and I have been married for 20 years, and we have 3 sons. All 3 boys attend Rockwood schools. I've proudly served on the Board of Education for the past 9 years. Additionally, I've also served on the governing council of the special school district for 9 years. Rockwood is at a crossroads. We can either move forward and get better, or we can regress, licking our wounds, blaming each other, and repeating mistakes of the past. I'd like to think that most of us here this evening are wanting to move forward, making Rockwood better than it's ever been. That will take 3 things. Number 1, admitting that Rockwood's challenges are not recent, but a big part of our past. 2, acknowledging that what our shortcomings are. And 3, making tough decisions and being able to support those decisions, support those choices, even when criticized, in order to propel this district ahead of our peers. In order to accomplish this, we must understand our history, the history of the school district, the history of prior problems. There's a famous quote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Why do I speak of history and experience? Because in order to fix mistakes without creating more problems, you must understand our history. There's some really great things about Rockwood that I'm proud that I've been a part of. Even though we've made numerous budget cuts in the last 5 years, I fought to keep elementary class size small. We've won the Meritorious Budget Award for many years. We've lowered the tax levy in 4 years between 2005 and 2008. We have a bond rating of a AAA. Many people like to stand from the outside and criticize us, saying we should run Rockwood like a business. Keep in mind, we are a nonprofit charged with the mission of educating all children of all abilities. If you're running a business, you wouldn't bother with educating our disabled children. That's how children with Down syndrome were treated in 1950. We're legally responsible for providing a free and appropriate education for all children. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Banton.
My name is Steve Banton, and I'm married, have 2 kids. My wife's name is Linda, and my son's name is Stephen II, and he's in 1st grade at Fairway Elementary School. And my daughter, this year, she became a teenager, 13, at Wildwood Middle School. So that's a challenge in and of itself. When I first went on to the school board, there were 2 things that were extremely important to me, and that is that we should improve student achievement. That student achievement should not be the goal 1 year and not another year, but it should be the goal every single year. We should be finding ways to help students achieve their goals and to help students learn. The second goal was to make sure that district resources and revenue are wisely used. That's an extremely important goal as well. In the past 15 years that I've been on the board, we've worked hard to create, first of all, how does the board operate? It operates by using 6 basic documents to provide, to set policy and regulations, the budget, the strategic plan, the superintendent evaluation, staff development, and the agenda. These documents are used in order to govern the district, to make various changes. And through these, we have increased we have changed the high school program. We have increased the number of advanced placement courses that are available. Advanced placement has become probably one of the number 1 or number 2 criteria for determining the best high schools in the nation. In the state of Missouri, all 4 of our high schools are ranked very tightly, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, when it comes to advanced placement in the state of Missouri.
Okay, Ms. Mundell.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Lee Mondel, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity tonight. I love kids. When I decided to run for the school board a few weeks ago, it was because how much I love kids, and that's been my driving force ever since. I was fortunate enough to be a teacher in this district several years ago. I taught chemistry and math and got to coach girls basketball at Marquette High School. Those continue to be some of the most influential years of my life, because for 5 years I had teenagers teaching me all about what's important in life. And I learned from them the importance of education even more. I walked away from that experience understanding we as a society have an obligation to our children, and that's to give them the best education possible. My husband and I have 2 sons in the district. We have a 6th grader at Rockwood South Middle School. We have a sophomore at Rockwood Summit High School. When I retired from teaching to stay home with my boys, I had the great opportunity to start volunteering in our schools in Fenton. I continue to go back to Utah Valley Elementary, even though my sons no longer attend that school, to help the 1st and 2nd graders with math. Anybody who knows me knows why I'm doing it, because I love kids, and because I want to give back to a school that has given so much to our family. This is a really critical time in our school district, and I am stepping forward at a time where, to be honest with you, I wanted to do this for the kids, but now I'm seeing something much bigger. I'm here to help the adults also. I'm here to make you all understand what's most important in this district are our kids. And people can talk about that, and people can see things in the paper, but I'm the sort of person that will not sit on the school board and wait for everybody else to take action in what we need to do in this district. This is a critical time, and we need positive thinking. We need to put all the negativity behind us, and I am asking each and every one of you to step forward and realize we have fiscal responsibilities we need to take care of.
Okay, I think your time is up. Okay. Everybody watch the time periods, and I'm sorry I didn't catch it. Thank you, Ms. Mondel. Mr. Morrell.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody for coming out. My name is Jeff Morrell. I moved my family, wife and 2 children, to St. Louis a little greater than 12 years ago from the West Coast, where I was educated in the public schools. My children have been part of Rockwood schools. One is now on achieving great things at the university level. My son is a junior at Lafayette High School. I retired this past December, a few months ago, from Enterprise Rent-A-Car in Clayton. After 23 years in the private sector, I've learned a lot from my time with Enterprise. More than half of that time was spent in operations with a true bottom line focus. For those of you who know much about Enterprise Holdings in Clayton, it's a very, very well-run company, and I was fortunate to learn from some of the best in the business. I retired as vice president of a business division in excess of $1 billion in revenue. I had responsibility for revenue, for all the costs, all the annual contracts associated with keeping the business flowing. And Enterprise has really given me a broad spectrum business education that I plan to bring to the Rockwood Board of Education. Contrary to some comments and to what was pointed out in Steve Smith's resignation letter in the last few days, he disagrees that Rockwood needs a business-like focus. I would argue that making sure that there's a business-like approach to Rockwood's finances, that there is common sense business processes looking after the money, can do more to give the children and the teachers the resources they need to achieve great things in this district. And that is why I chose to run for the school district board. My plans for Rockwood are simple. It's really 3-pronged. Safety and security of our campuses and your kids. Real safety initiatives that I can talk about if anybody wants to. Common sense oversight of the finances. I think your time is up. Okay. I'll answer the rest of the questions.
All righty. We're going to have plenty of time here. Mr. Manton, we're going to start the first question with you.
All right.
And let's get right to it. Question is, I would like to know what you will initially do immediately to get us back on track. What will you do to restore confidence in the Board of Education? 1 minute.
Okay, first of all, we would adopt a policy and change the way that that change orders are done. That change orders would reflect not only the amount paid for a particular project, but would reflect anything else that's involved, any other fees and so forth in the change order. That if the change order is change that's caused by the construction requirements have changed, then those change orders would be treated differently. That you wouldn't have to rebid those because you have someone doing the project. But if it is a brand new project, then basically being done with excess funds that over and above the bond, then that would be rebid.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mondel.
If I'm elected on April 2nd, on April 3rd, I want to meet with our district attorney. I want to find exactly what is considered to be information that has to be only in a closed session of a board meeting and what's supposed to be in open. I think we all get the understanding that too many things have been secretive in this district, and I think it's time that absolutely everything that we can possibly share with everyone is what we need to do. I've been told that people don't want to come to board meetings because they sit there and they feel as if everything they're saying or asking of the board they ignore. So I really feel it's time to reconnect this community, and that is like one of the things I strongly believe in, is reconnecting the community with the board and the teachers and the kids.
Thank you. Mr. Morrell.
First and foremost, I would meet with the new CFO, Mr. Rooney, and find out why we can't give the public a realistic approach to what the deficit's going to be. We get a number, it changes every quarter. There are actions, some personnel actions taken based on those numbers, and I don't think the public's got confidence in them. It's certainly those folks whose careers are impacted by some of the changes that those numbers mandate have confidence in the finance of Rockwood. We have fiscal chaos and not the leadership to really solve this problem, and that would be the first order of business.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Strati?
First and foremost, I think what we need to do is review our policies regarding construction and program management, issuing of contracts throughout the organization for any kind of construction and that sort of thing. Also, how our review our policies on bidding. Also, I think we need to have a series of town hall meetings throughout the district, kind of a listening and learning tour again, reviewing the audit findings with the public to make sure that accurate information is actually out there instead of a lot of third-party information and innuendo, and being able to answer to the various communities where we're at and how we plan on addressing the audit findings that are out there.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Benton. Oh, excuse me, we started with you.
Started with me.
Okay. Ms. Mondel. Go ahead. I already did it. Yes. Ms. Morrell, everybody's done it, right?
Right.
Okay, I am tired today. I had to work all day. All right. We're going to start this time with Ms. Mondel. And this is a question, let me just tell you, because I want to stay on the same topic, that's primarily issued to the two people who've been on the board. So I want to open it up and say, what are your thoughts about this? Here is the specific question. Regarding the program manager contract, of which Glenn Construction was the exclusive beneficiary for nearly 20 years, was this contract reviewed and negotiated each time a new bond issue was issued? Now, that's a specific factual question for the two of you, but I want to know for the other two folks what they think about that kind of process. Ms. Mondel.
Again, I go back to the open, everything being more open. I find it hard to believe that our school district has been on the front page of the Post-Dispatch and with adults being bad. And I would like to see our kids on the front page of the newspaper doing great things, because you know great things are going on in this community. I'm in support of the bond issue, so I would hope that when this bond issue passes, that we have in place policies and bidding contracts out the proper way, because the audit has shown that there's been some major mistakes made in the past.
Okay. Mr. Morrell.
Certainly, I think that there's a lot of common sense judgment that can be exercised over the way these contracts are handled. You know, listening to the state auditor the other night, it's alarming to hear that contracts are signed without a guarantee of price. It's alarming to hear that contracts are not open for bid. These aren't mistakes, folks. This is negligence. I don't know of anybody in the room that would go to add a countertop to their kitchen or a pool in their backyard that wouldn't open up to competitive bids to find the most qualified contractor to save them some money. The current board has not done that with yours.
Okay, Ms. Strati.
Can you read the question again?
Yes, the question is, regarding the program manager contract of which Glenn Construction was the exclusive beneficiary of nearly 20 years, was this contract reviewed and negotiated each time a new bond was issued?
Okay. I believe it was reviewed by administrators. Obviously, the board did approve it. The thing with Glenn Construction is they actually really do know our buildings very, very well. I know we have improved our policies on this. It's much different it will be much different going forward, but and our policies that are in place are much tighter than what we've had in the past.
Thank you. Mr. Banton.
First of all, when it comes to services, the policies generally we have every time there is some controversy or something that comes up, or that it's brought to our attention that something's not working quite right, then we go back to what those policies are and the rules and regulations, and we make changes to make sure that those problems don't arise again. We can't foresee everything that could take place, but that's what we constantly do. In fact, I suggested, and we started a policy of changing and reviewing all policies on a regular basis so that it's covered in a cycle, so that we have looked at everything. So we look at everything with a view of how this fits what our goal is, and that is to improve student achievement.
Okay. Mr. Morrell, we're going to start with you this time. We're going to switch gears a little bit, and let's talk about the classroom. What have you done to educate yourself about what's going on in the classroom? And there's a number of questions that say, how do you know what's going on in these individual local schools?
Well, thank you. I think of everybody here, I have the least experience in education. But I think a good board member ought to be visible. A good board member ought to be engaged with the students, with the administrators, with the leaders of the schools, with the classroom. They ought to be around to find out from kids what they're learning, what problems they have. Same thing with parents. They ought to be visible. They ought to be open. They ought to be engaging. I see the reports that everybody has access to about class size, and those things can all be discussed. I've not once seen a report or a study that factually shows that an increase in class size really has a negative effect on student achievement. I think we intuitively know that fewer students per teacher can have a positive effect, but I think a positive teacher can overcome some of those number challenges. But again, from the very outset, my goal is to make sure that the district is not top-heavy, that every available resource is dedicated to the classroom.
I think your time is up.
I've yet to see an administrator inspire a kid.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Strati?
Yes, I've probably started with being classroom volunteer at the elementary level. Also, I've been part of the various curriculum committees, curriculum reviews, all the cycles that we've had throughout the last 9 years. Also, one of the things that's important for us is to be able to keep on top of what's going on in the educational field by reading periodicals such as Education Week and that, and staying on top of the changes that are coming through both from DESE and from the federal government.
Thank you. Mr. Banton.
Well, first of all, being very active on various committees, attending various meetings, serving on the Rockwood Schools Foundation, serving on as a member of the Governing Council of the Special School District, serving as Rockwood's member on the Missouri School Board Association, and going into the classrooms and on different occasions and so forth for Reading Week and things of that nature, and participating in a lot of different events that take place in our schools.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mondel?
As I said earlier, I was a teacher in this district, and since that time I've been volunteering in different classrooms in the Fenton community, because that's where my kids attend the schools. I've seen firsthand what teachers are going through these days. Our teachers are getting up every morning and are going to educate our kids. And they're doing that when everything else is around them in the newspapers and the audit and what the decisions they're making, and our teachers are still doing what they love to do. I've also had the opportunity to sit on the Guidance Advisory Council and have learned that our guidance counselors, this is a critical time for them as well. It's not the same sort of guidance counselors that we needed when we were all in high school. Times have changed, and so I'm proud to say that I've been in the classroom an awful lot in the last 15, 20 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, if everybody could hold your applause. We are going to now talk about those teachers and those counselors. So, Ms. Strati, this question starts with you. And that is, someone asks, and there are 3 questions about teacher salaries. Here's the most specific. A Rockwood teacher with 20 years of service and a master's degree plus 30 hours makes 26% less than a teacher in Parkway with the same level of experience in education. How do you explain this to our teachers? What are your plans to address this?
The board is very much aware of the problem with the salaries. I think if it wasn't for the economy, we had a goal of working very hard to make sure that our teachers were moving towards the midpoint. The economy definitely and the budget cuts that we had to make definitely derailed that, unfortunately. Definitely we would like to see additional revenue and the ability to work teachers towards at least the midpoint, especially given the requirements that we have for the teachers.
Okay, Mr. Banton?
Well, we certainly need to get the teachers as close to the midpoint as possible because, first of all, the most important individual in helping kids to learn is the teacher, and the teacher needs to be an extremely competent teacher, someone who's got the qualities, and you're not going to, if the disparity gets wider and wider, then you're not going to be able to attract and keep the best teachers. We've witnessed that with some lateral moves being made in administrators as well as teachers, and the lateral moves to other districts would not be in the best interest of Rockwood.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mondel.
I'm very much in favor of fiscal responsibility, and I am a firm believer that we need to look at the budget and have more of a long-term set of goals instead of going year to year like we've been doing the last few years. And I've met with Tim Rooney, and I think he is going to be a fine addition to this school district. He's the CFO. And I've discussed these sorts of issues with him. I really feel that this is the time to start at least making efforts to raise those teacher salaries. And I understand we can't do it overnight. And I understand we may not be able to do it in the next 2 to 3 years, but we at least have to start making some sort of effort to at least, you keep saying getting to the midway point, and I agree with that, But at some point, we're going to have to make this effort to at least give our teachers a little more compensation, because we're losing very, very good teachers and administrators. They're going to different districts right next door to make a whole awful lot more money.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morrell?
Anecdotally, I continue to be impressed with meetings with Rockwood teachers. It's all been centered around parent-teacher meetings, but I now have a child that's off to university, and some of the investment that some of these teachers continue to make with her and go out of their way, dipping into their pockets from time to time. I would agree. When we moved to St. Louis 12 and a half years ago, we only shopped for homes in Rockwood for a reason. That needs to continue. You can't lose the best and the brightest teachers, and I would agree with Ms. Mondel that you know, there's got to be a way to set a plan that we can stick to get them to the median and beyond. The teachers here, I believe, are better than the teachers in other districts. We can't continue to lose them, and we will. Fiscal responsibility is the one thing that's going to enable us to pursue that. I firmly believe that any available resource needs to go to the best and the brightest teachers. I've told the teachers union in the past that I'd like to pursue a system to allow our better teachers to make more money than some of those ones that aren't
thank
pursuing.
you very much. Mr. Banton, we're going to start with you. Now let's talk about those counselors. I have 3 questions that are talking about their concerns about cuts to counseling. And they say that the level of intervention and the kinds of services that they need to provide your children have become far more complicated. Okay? How do you justify these cuts? How do you balance the academic needs of the district with the emotional and social needs of your students?
That's a very good question. And the counselors are extremely important, and so are the teachers, and so are the nurses, and so are all of the individuals. They play an important role. And I can't say that one is more important necessarily than the other, because if you have an unstable situation, that could lead to some problems. So I feel that basically you've got to look at them as all professionals, treating them all as professionals, and compensating them accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mondel?
I have had the opportunity this year to sit on the Guidance Advisory Council, which is made up of the counselors in our district. And I told them at our last meeting that I'm pretty sure they're one of the reasons why I'm running for the school board, besides the kids. Because the stories I've heard them tell have just been overwhelming. More and more kids in our elementary schools are talking about hurting themselves. And the lethality rate in our middle schools are very high. So when I sit and hear that sort of information, and then I hear that we're cutting our counselors, the problem is not that kids are hurting themselves. It's the idea that we have to now try and understand why these kids are going through what they're going through. And again, I go back to times are way different than when I was in high school. My guidance counselor threw some papers on the table and said, here's the college you should think about going to. But this is a big picture, and to me, this is a very, very important thing in our district.
Mr. Morrell. Mr. Morrell?
Yes. I would agree with most of the comments that have been said. I think anybody that comes face-to-face with one of our kids has to be made a priority. The only way they can be made a priority is if we have the money to do it. I think the district should be evaluated in terms of its operating model to make certain that we've got the resources to keep inspiring our kids and keep catching the ones that might fall through the cracks. But you know, my passion for running for the school board is making sure that when a teacher or a child needs something, that we don't have to tell the parents no, because we can't afford it. There's clearly money that can be saved that's been all over the newspapers. I am just excited about how much more money can be recaptured and rededicated towards the kids if somebody is truly analyzing all of the spending going on in the district.
Hey, Ms. Strati.
Yeah, the last 5 years we've had to make significant cuts, and I can honestly say that I don't think any seven members that have made these difficult decisions of cutting millions of dollars out of the budget. Hasn't been easy for anyone. Many times our choice is, do we increase class size or do we make adjustments to other staffing? Obviously, I think all of us agree that the counselors are an important component to the team that's serving the children. Any way that we can bring counselors back, especially in accordance with what MSIP guidelines are, we definitely need to be able to do that.
Okay, Ms. Mondel, we're going to be first with you this time. There's a number of questions about bad budgeting, better decisions, budget cuts. So here's the most specific of them. Errors in budget information have led to staff cuts, program cuts, minimizing funds, etc. How will you correct bad decisions and make better ones in the future?
That's a great question. First of all, I go back to the openness. I mean, I really feel as if so many things have been done in secret, and I feel like the whole process of how we look at our budget has to be more open, more community involvement. I think that I agree with Mr. Morell in so many respects that, you know, it's very hard to hear that the audit showed that we've lost $1.2 million, and that's an awful lot of money. That alone could probably start raising some of those teacher salaries, and that alone could probably, agreeing with him also, is get some more of that money into the classroom where it belongs with our kids. So I think the whole process has to be looked at very closely.
Okay, Mr. Morell?
In my experience in the private sector, when the financial crisis hit in 2008, we were a very lean company, and our charge was to cut 15% from our operating budget without cutting any muscle. And we did it in spades. I mean, it wasn't that difficult. It was like an aha moment. The light went on, like, why have we been operating like this in the past? And fortunately for Rockwood, there's some things that come to light that force some of that behavior. But I'm certain that if the private sector can cut 15% without cutting muscle, I'm sure the public sector has that ability to do so. I mean, there's all sorts of common sense things that will come to light, like Ms. Mondel said. If the public believes that their voice will be heard, if they have a forum to have their voice heard, some of these things will be stopped by a common sense mother or father raising their hand saying, wait, why aren't we doing it this way? And that would apply to 6 or 7 items that were highlighted in the audit.
Okay, Ms. Strati.
I think there's several components here. Number one, we have a new CFO. He's looking at all the variables in the estimates of our budgeting process, and I actually believe that his estimates are much more accurate, so we're not going to have the fluctuations that we experienced in the past. Also, I believe that if we begin doing the town hall meetings like I talked about earlier, and really reaching out. We've already reached out with Picture Rockwood, finding out what our stakeholders in the community are looking for, and really making sure that we're setting those priorities as we're working on the budget that must be completed by June 30. Thank you. Mr. Banton.
Well, I think one of the big elements that has created a lot of the fluctuation is the fact that DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary, there are 2 formulas that they have used with respect to funding public schools. The old formula would cause us to lose basically about $8 million per year. The new formula that's in effect would cause us to get about $5 million a year. Now there is a fluctuation there of about $13 million. Now if you plan for something in the middle, or do you plan for the worst situation, or do you plan for the best, not knowing what the legislature is going to do to you?
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Morell, we're going to start with you this time. There's a lot of questions about the audit and the superintendent, so I'm going to try to combine them. But what the sense of the questions really is this: does it make sense to extend the superintendent's contract in light of the audit? What should be done about that? Even more so, voting to extend it before the audit results were released. Please comment on your approach to this situation.
Thank you. certainly I'm not sure that in an environment where the survey of the public opinion of Rockwood shows a declining level of trust in the board, even if I agreed that the superintendent's contract ought to be extended, I certainly wouldn't have done that 3 days before the public learned about the audit. That doesn't foster trust. That fosters some secretive backroom deals. I also think that if there is a change in the board, that it makes any potential change in direction, if that's what is needed, makes it more expensive, drawing more resources out of the classroom. So I don't agree with the extension of the superintendent's contract at that time. Do I agree the contract should be extended? I think it depends. If we dig in and find out who's responsible for all of the oversights brought up by the embarrassing audit, aside from the board members, I would think that the decision could be made then.
Okay, Ms. Strati? Ms. Strati. You are going to be lively. I was wrong. You're beating Kirkwood with the applause, but don't do it in too much more. Okay, Ms. Strati.
The board has a policy in place that says that the superintendent's contract must be addressed, either an extension and salary increase, or no extension and no salary increase. That must be approved during a board meeting in February. We were running out of time, actually. One of the reasons we did briefly extend Dr. Borch's contract, he is focused on student achievement, which is what we're here for. He's doing a lot on the student achievement side, and it was a 4-3 vote, and a majority of the board did feel that he was focusing on student achievement.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Banton.
Well, in addition to focusing on student achievement, he was also addressing some of those problems that we talked about. The construction problems, first of all, involved bond issues that were adopted before he got here in the first place. And to blame him for anything involving prior bond issue just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. In addition to that, the board sets up policies and sets up goals and so forth. And he was meeting those policies and those goals and so forth that had been set up. And in light of that, then our responsibility is not to be led by whoever is the popular out there as to whether or not he should come back. If he's doing the job and he's attacking the problems, then that's what he's there for, to attack those particular problems and get it done.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mondel.
I know Dr. Borchers, and I'm glad to say I've sat on several committees with him, and I really truly believe he has the kids' best interest at heart. I think he's a data-driven superintendent, and the unfortunate part is I think some decisions were made early on regarding consultants and other things that I think has really been very difficult for him to recover from. I think that was the board's fault. I think that was his fault. And I think at some point it would have been nice to hear an apology that perhaps we may have made a mistake. And I think that would have...
Okay, folks, let her finish.
I think that would have gone a long ways. That being said, I go back to the openness. His explanation of why they just renewed his contract, I wish would have been more public, because he makes some very good points in there. But instead, we hear that they renew the contract 4-3, and that's hard to swallow if you don't know everything that's gone on behind closed doors.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Strati, you're first this time. We keep talking about communicating with the community. So let me begin with a specific question about that and then go to a general one. Here's the specific one for everybody to answer. How can you say that you want to communicate with community stakeholders, and yet on your calendar it doesn't, and this is your meaning, the whole group, not just yours, and yet does not include attending the monthly meeting of the PTO President's Organization?
I don't understand.
Okay?
Can you read that again?
In other words, the question says, everybody keeps talking about communicating better with the community. If you want to do that, okay, would you have an official plan to communicate with community stakeholders? Why wouldn't that include attending the monthly meeting of the PTO President's Organization? I'm not from Rockwood, so you're going to have to tell me what that organization is.
The PTO presidents in Rockwood have a monthly meeting. They kind of rotate between during the day and a couple of I think they have 2 evenings. They meet during, between, I guess, September and May. I attend every meeting, so, and it's a chance for Dr. Borchers and some of the other administrators to inform the PTO parents what's going on in the community, and then they in turn go back to their communities and their schools and share that at their individual PTO meetings. And I attend those meetings on a monthly basis to hear concerns that are asked of Dr. Borchers and the other administrators.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Banton?
I think that's important, but at the same time, I can't, I've got a full-time job, and I can't always get to various events that take place. In addition to that, the responsibilities of having to go to court, I don't have the flexibility that I had before. So I can't just simply take off to do those things. But I do try to get to as many things as I can.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mondel?
I'm actually a member of the President's Forum because I'm the co-president at Rockwood South Middle School. And maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I see Janet there every meeting, and I feel that they do a very nice job updating our PTOs as to what's going on in the community. So I really feel, as a very informed parent, that between her and Dr. Borchers and Kim Cranston, who are always at our meetings, that they do a very nice job conveying what's going on in the district.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Morrell?
I think that transparency can go a long way towards earning the public's trust, at least if you set the stage for them to engage on all the issues the board is facing. You're not going to please everybody, but at least they'll understand that decisions are made in the best interest of the kids of Rockwood. And you know, I think there's a communication team that Rockwood has that can be leveraged for new ideas. I think that all items currently under consideration by the board should be on a working list that is made public, that is pushed out to folks, that's on a website, so that there's no excuse that folks didn't know what decisions are being made. I think that, you know, even, you know, cutesy ideas like at every board meeting, have somebody pull out one of the issues and hear from both sides of what the board is debating, the positives and the negatives, so that they can get an understanding of the decisions the board is facing and could be a part of that process. Aside from that, you know, I think most of the better ideas will come from within, because there's some good folks here that I think with the right vision and the right direction can engage the folks at a meaningful level.
Okay. It's been stated by the school board and by a number of people in this district that great things are going on and that the students are doing great things. But we still have students who are underachievers and who are at risk. What is your plan to help them?
Who do you start with?
I'm going to start with Mr. Banton.
Okay. All right. One of the things that I have been excited about is the idea, the dashboard, the idea of being able to focus and find out where weaknesses are that a student has. If a student's not learning fractions, why are they not learning fractions? Is it the method? Does that student learn a different way than other students? Then we can adopt a procedure or whatever that will help that student achieve. By using the idea and the concept of the dashboard, we'll be able to find out where there are weaknesses and how we can adjust those, and that can be shared among the teachers. And in addition to that, if a person has already done very well, what do you provide to help that person go even higher, achieve more? And that's what will help. And that is the assessment system that Dr. Borchards has talked about, which
Okay,
would
I think your
be
time
ideal.
is up. Thank you. Ms. Mondel?
As a former teacher, I mean, I guess I could say I wish I had a classroom of kids who were always going to ace every test that I gave them. But I didn't have a classroom of those kids. Instead, I had a classroom of really bright kids that tried, some that didn't try. Some kids who came to school every day and worked so hard for that B that they got in my chemistry class. But I told my kids the very first day when they walked into my classroom, my job is not to make you love chemistry or math, because that's not realistic. My job is to make sure you walk out of my classroom with a greater appreciation of science and get the big picture of where you're going to use this in your life someday. And I think if you ask my students, my former students, they would tell you that they walked out of my classroom feeling that way. So as far as the underachiever, I challenged each one of my kids to work as hard as they possibly could and get as much out of my class as they could while they were there.
Thank you. Mr. Morrell?
I think that if there is a culture and an environment in the district that truly does focus on what goes on in the classroom, resources to the teachers, resources to the kids, and if we can figure out a way to create a system that rewards and promotes teachers based on student achievement, I think it'll go a long way towards making sure that all of our kids are looked after. You know, I'm new to education, so that would be something I'd have to dig in and figure out, but that would be my goal. Make sure we have teachers that truly care about all the kids. Make teachers understand that when their students achieve, when they continue to inspire these kids, it will positively impact their career, and Rockwood will have the freedom to promote them.
Okay, Ms. Strati.
Dr. Borchers and the other administrators, in particular Karen Kiefer is one administrator I'd like to call out. They're doing amazing work working with the data dashboard, really drilling down important areas like mathematics and language arts, focusing on analyzing by schools, by class, by subject, by grade, very, very important aspects of making sure that our kids are learning. One thing that as a board we already have approved is additional funding for interventions, in particular reading and math. But with the use of the data dashboard, especially providing us with true information on the direction that we're supposed to focus, where our children are underachieving, this is where we can focus our resources.
Okay. We've got time. I think this goes till 8 o'clock or 8:30, is it? 8:30. Great, because I've got lots of good questions. Thank you. There are 5 or 6 questions about your positions on Prop S. Let me put them together. People want to know what your position is on Prop S. Do you support it? If you do support it, they want to know what you will do to get it passed. Okay? So let's start with Ms. Mondel.
Okay. I support Prop S. I was on the Picture Rockwood facilitating team, so I certainly heard everyone's concerns about what's going on in our district. And I, for one, felt that we needed a tax increase, but because that goes back to the idea where I think we need to have a long-range goal of what we're doing. But our community decided, they said that they were against a tax increase, but they would support a bond issue. Here's what the bond issue does for us. It takes those items, and if anything ever happens with security or safety, with technology, and we need to start purchasing computers, those items are going to come out of our operating budget. And here we are talking about our operating budget and how we're finding shortfalls. And so what this bond does is it gives us an opportunity to get those projects done.
Okay, Mr. Morrell?
For those that sat through the audit presentation, it was quite embarrassing knowing that how proud of a district Rockwood is, and just a lack of common sense oversight of the money. I'm not in a position to say that I would support a bond issue when the finances of the district are in chaos. You know, maybe at another go-around, maybe some of the things that are funded out of the bond issue can be funded out of an operating budget. I mean, that's how the real world tends to work. But I think we really need to get a handle on what we're doing and where we're spending money unwisely before we go back to the taxpayers and tell them we're going to collect more money, borrow more money.
Hey, Ms. Strati, go ahead.
I have a bit different of an opinion. I don't believe our finances are in chaos. I do support the bond issue.
Okay, folks, let them talk.
I do support the bond issue. I think it's very important that we keep on top of the maintenance of our buildings, of all of our resources. Also making sure that we have appropriate safety for the kids and the technology so that we can move to the next level. You know, to support it, I'm definitely reaching out to people that I know in the community and asking them to vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Banton?
I support the bond issue. When it comes to the various items in the bond issue, they're being matched. They're matched up with the length of time in which it would take the lifespan, so that it is not something that it's not something like buying something that's going to be used up in a year, but it's something that's going to last for at least that lifetime of the bond. That's critical. In addition to that, the bond issue is how the district has operated in the past. It did originally operate with that in the regular budget, but over a period of time, in cutting and in order to try to make ends meet and so forth, the maintenance, the technology, and everything else basically suffered. And those wound up going into bond issues, and so bond issues...
Hey, I think your time is up. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Morrell, we're going to start with you this time and talking about increased cost and things looming on the horizon. There are several audience members who are concerned about improving security in light of Newtown. Can you talk a little bit about the kinds of projects or the kinds of things that you would investigate to improve security?
I've met with a captain in Chesterfield as a good representative sample of what we can do, what we are doing, and where they disagree with the plans that Rockwood has. I, for one, am a firm believer that when Mr. Rooney found that there are excess funds over and above what is required to be kept in the bank as reserves, that the security of any decision about security should have been funded and implemented immediately. The fact that those things are on the board as a headline issue, to me, says that security is not that important. I've got some alarming stats for you folks. There is a school shooting in the United States more than once a month on average for the last 35 years. When a shooter gets into, for example, a school with an armed guard, let's use Lafayette as an example, that shooter, regardless of where they are, will be neutralized in under 3 minutes. Chesterfield, for an example, today has middle schools and elementary schools that have one resource officer dedicated to all of them, whether it's 8
Your time is up, and I think you can take this up in your closing statement. Okay?
Thank you. This is my first rodeo, so thank you for the advice.
That's okay. And please excuse me, I'm a school teacher, so I'll just keep doing my job. Okay? Ms. Strati.
Ways to improve security. I think it's definitely important that we make sure that all of our buildings are following the appropriate procedures that we have to make sure that the doors are properly locked, that people are buzzed in appropriately. One of the things that we've just done at the high school is make sure that there is someone at the front door. I've been into several of the high schools recently, and they are following those procedures. People make sure that you have a badge, you'll get stopped in the hall, and that. I was stopped twice today because my name tag kept falling off. Also, I think it's important that we work with the various municipalities in making sure that we have an increased police presence. I do know that the various police chiefs have said they don't have the staffing right now to ensure that. However, we need to work with them to make sure that we're very much on the rotation and look for ways to increase, if it has to be funding, to make sure that we have more police present at some of our schools.
Thank you. Mr. Banton.
Could you repeat that question?
What would you do to increase security measures as we go forward, given Newtown?
Well, first of all, to make sure that you have good locks, to make sure you have a system, basically, which is so that a person can't, with a weapon or something, blow their way into the school, as would happen in Connecticut. You want to basically make sure that it is secure as possible. There is communication between Rockwood and various police departments to have surveillances among the various schools that are in their jurisdictions. So this would provide additional presence that would help as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mondel?
I've heard Jesus Villamosa speak several times, and he's the consultant that the district has used for safety. And I know for sure is that a lot of districts across the United States look at Rockwood as a prime example of what to do in school safety. And I don't disagree with Janet in the fact that, you know, one of the things after Newtown, when you approach a school now and you ring the buzzer, they're starting to ask your name, which I think is very good. But there are things we can do. We can update security cameras. We can maybe at some point possibly have it so when a police officer gets a phone call that there's a shooting in a school, the police officer simply comes up to the door, and every police officer in the district has a fingerprint, and that's how they, in essence, get into the building. So there are lots of things that I'm sure we can do, but I do know that we're in a very, very safe school district, and I feel safe sending my kids every day.
Thank you very much. Ms. Strati, we're going to start with you. What do you feel about the VICC program? Do you support limiting transfer students?
Yes. We have had the voluntary transfer program in Rockwood for definitely, I think, over 20 years. And every year on an annual basis, we approve bringing new students into the voluntary transfer program. I think it brings a good form of diversity into many of our buildings and provides a very good education for the children from the city. Probably my biggest concern with it is how drastically the funding for the voluntary transfer program has dropped in the last 5 years. Where our cost per student is at roughly $10,000 right now, we're getting roughly $6,000 from the voluntary transfer program. So that's a very big concern.
Thank you very much. Mr. Banton?
We've made a commitment to close the gap that exists between the VTS students and the other students in Rockwood, and we're not using the intervention that are necessary in order to close the gap. Now, while VIC students furnish additional revenue to the district, we're not furnishing the additional, we're not meeting those additional needs in order to get them up, in order to close that gap. And the revenue should be committed to that purpose before you start taking in more students, and that gap is not closing, but that gap is increasing. Brentwood is a good example of one that has closed the gap. And while in Rockwood, the VIC students have additional benefit of being in the Rockwood environment.
Your time is up. Thank you very much.
They nevertheless, the gap's not
Ms.
closed.
Mondel?
I believe in the VIC program very strongly. When I was a teacher, I would have students of mine that would get on the school bus at 6 a.m. in the morning, drive all the way out to Marquette High School, become students all day long, and then we would go to an away basketball game. And so at 10:30 at night, I was standing outside Marquette High School waiting for a cab to show up for this child to go back into the city and turn around and do it the very next day. And why were those kids doing it? Because they wanted a good education. And why is it important that we do that? Because we as a society, it's one of our obligations, I believe, is to give every kid an opportunity. And I am still in contact with a few of those girls, and they have become very fine citizens, and I'm very proud of them for the accomplishments. And I can tell you that a couple of them even like chemistry now.
Okay. Mr. Morrell?
I've met some great kids that have been the beneficiary of these programs, and I think that if we have the funds to afford the continuation of it, absolutely, we ought to.
Okay, thank you very much. Here's a very specific question, but 3 people are concerned about the busing. They're concerned about wasting money on transportation. So they want to know, is everybody interested in looking into changes in a bus system? They say, 2 people say, that you have a number of buses that are half full and a number that are running when kids should be walking. So let's start with you, Mr. Banton.
Well, you could require, the law does not require that you pick up to a half mile from an elementary school or any school, but you could require greater distance, and you could cut down on the number of buses, but we have a 3-tiered system that has been developed, and that tiered system works fairly effective. It works fairly effective because it maximizes the use of those buses and facilities. Now, some people want, it does require that you have different start times. But nevertheless, it's effective. And if there is space that's available on a bus, why shouldn't it pick up kids that might have to cross a dangerous street or that might be a little bit closer?
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mondel?
I actually have often wondered about the busing system in Rockwood. And the reason why I've wondered that is because I grew up in a very small town in central Wisconsin, Edgar, Wisconsin, and the side of all of our buses were the Edgar School District. And so I've never really thought about this, but, and I didn't think this would be a question tonight, but I would like to look into if there is a possibility of buying our own buses and running that. I have no idea what the costs are included, but it certainly is something that I would like to look into.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Morrell?
I would agree. I mean, I think the logistics of doing that are very, very complex. And there's no law that says you've got to pick up a kid who lives a block down the road. I would also like to look at some of the outlying areas to make sure that there's an effective use of not only the drivers but the buses themselves. I think it's something that, you know, certainly is a high priority given the weather concerns, given the safety concerns that we as parents would face with the kids not being able to jump on a bus and go that block. You know, I don't have a whole lot of experience with the logistics of school busing, but certainly it would be a high priority to make sure that that service is available to the majority of the kids if we can.
Okay, Ms. Strati.
There is a rule about transporting within a half a mile. One of the big things that historically as a board that we've looked at, and I go back to when I was first on the board, one of the big cases that happened when I was first on the board was, if everyone recalls, Ben Ownby, who was abducted right after he got off the bus and had to walk almost a mile from his bus stop to his house. Safety is obviously a big concern, safety of the children. Another concern is also the traffic congestion in the neighborhoods. Many of our school buildings are in subdivisions, and so we have to look at what kind of traffic congestion we would add to that community. Are there sidewalks? Is it safe for children to walk? A lot of those factors go into it.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question, we're going to start, I believe, with you, Mr. Morrell. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was Orly's turn.
It's Ms. Mondel.
But I'll take it.
I've written names on these questions. So this is a question that people are really concerned about. Why are we one of the few districts in the state that doesn't have full-day kindergarten? There are 2 questions about this. They have several parts. They, in essence, both argue that full-day kindergarten is a really important thing. They want to know your position on it.
When I listened to people in Picture Rockwood, they, of course, had many, many concerns. And full-day kindergarten was not one of the top priorities that people seem to express in Picture Rockwood. That being said, I'm a firm believer in early childhood education. And I believe very strongly that if you start educating your kids from the minute they're born, that's going to help them for their whole lives. But going back to Picture Rockwood, I certainly remember the discussions about this, and it's a very heated topic, and I understand people's concerns about it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morrell?
It wasn't a high priority from the folks in Rockwood, either on Picture Rockwood or in the public survey that was out there. It was one of the lowest items in terms of garnering public support. I would understand, given Rockwood's finances, that if you had a kid that was about ready to enter kindergarten, you'd be for it, and if you didn't, you'd be against it, so I get all that. But I believe, I had full-day kindergarten as a kid. I believe that getting off to the right start at that young age is important. Right now, the district cannot afford it. If the district's finances are in a position where we can afford kindergarten for the kids, great. All the money should be dedicated towards the classroom and towards the kids.
Thank you very much. Ms. Strati?
Most definitely, I would support full-day kindergarten. The problem is funding. As we all have mentioned, so far, Picture Rockwood, the latest surveys from the community show that allocating resources to that is not supported by our community. If we had the funding, most definitely, I would support full-day kindergarten.
Mr. Banton?
Full-day kindergarten, just like early childhood, is extremely important, because if you make the change and help the child at that particular point, then that gap is not going to get wider. That gap, people will start out at one particular level and they'll be able to advance and progress. But if you get rid of full-day kindergarten, or not get rid of it, but if you don't have full-day kindergarten, then you will have you're not going to be doing the most that you can to help students achieve. Full-day kindergarten is necessary for students to fully achieve as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
It depends, of course, on the revenue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Morrell, we're going to start with you this time. People are asking two factual questions that they want all of these candidates to answer, so I'm going to put them together. The first question of this two-part question is, number one, do you intend to fulfill your 3-year term? 2, they want to know if you're employed by any vendors in the district. Okay? So you can do yes, no, maybe. Think you could do it in a minute.
I'll spare everybody some time. I fully intend, if elected, to fill my commitment of 3 years to the Board of Education. And I just told everybody I retired this past December, so I've got all the time in the world.
Okay? And vendors in the district? You're not employed in any way then, right?
Not employed at all.
Okay. Ms. Strati?
Yes, most definitely. I intend to fulfill my 3-year career or commitment. I've served the last 9 years. I'm not moving anywhere. My kids are still attending school. And as far as work goes, this is my job. So I am not employed by any vendors with Rockwood.
Thank you. Mr. Banton?
Yes, I would serve my term, and I'm not employed by any vendors in Rockwood. I'm self-employed.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mondel?
I fully expect to be here for 3 years, if not longer, and I do not have any connections with any vendors.
Okay, so we have that out of the way. Now, let's get to a tough question here, and I want to open up this question to the two folks who weren't on the board. I have a number of questions by people who want to know how you voted to appoint or not to appoint Mr. Smith to the board. And to widen that question to the other two folks who have not yet served on the board, what are the kind of criteria that you would look at to vote for an appointed member of the board? So I'd like to start with you, Ms. Strati.
When Steve Smith put his name in to serve on the board to fulfill Raul Casa's position, I guess 3 years ago, he had definitely knowledge of the school district from the standpoint he had served as a board member. He understood the policies and rules, sunshine law, and that sort of thing. He also had a willingness to come back and volunteer. And that was probably the biggest criteria that I think the board looked at. As far as any board members fulfilling Steve Smith's position, I think that it's important that who's ever fulfilling Steve's last last year of his term, that they have the ability to work with the other 6 board members that are serving.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Banton?
Well, Steve Smith, besides serving several terms early in the 90s, he had also come in when a representative board member from Eureka was hired by Christopher Kidd Bond, and he served out her term for a year and basically indicated that he could do the same, and there were no ill effects or anything of that nature at that time, and he was not, first of all, at the time he served that time, he was not employed except by St. Louis University, and I think he was chosen primarily because of his background and experience and because he had stepped in before.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Mondel?
I would hope that the person that is going to be appointed to the board is the same sort of person as myself, someone who believes in kids, someone who believes that the negativity that's been going on in our district needs to stop. There needs to be more positive solutions. We need to start finding solutions. I would also feel that, as Janet mentions, I think it's very important you have to work with 6 other people. I've told many people that. You know, you may all think that when I get on the board, I'm going to do this, this, and this, but the reality of it is I'm one person, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that everybody tries to see what I view as important because I've listened to the community. But I would also hope that it's somebody who believes in the openness that I keep talking about.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Morrell?
I too would want to know why they want to get involved, why they want to give back, and I would hope that it would be about furthering the education of our kids. I would want to find out what sort of experience and skill set they can bring to the board to bring some diversity, to make sure that we can achieve all of our objectives. And I would like to make sure that a member of the board would have the time necessary to engage with the district and the teachers and the schools leadership and the community in a positive way that we've all talked about, to make sure that they have the time to really do the job that's necessary.
Okay, thank you. A number of people are concerned about how board meetings are going to go to increase this connection to the community after this election. 3 of them have asked the question in one way or another. Why is it that citizens' questions are never answered at a board meeting? Why are they sent to talk to someone instead of engaging in direct dialogue? So, Mr. Banton?
Well, I think the reason that has taken place is because it's to get the input, but at the same time, it's not to try to it's to try to resolve the problem, but not discussion of the board on every single thing that comes up. I think the idea behind it is to make sure that problem is addressed. Because, for example, Dr. Larson and other members of the cabinet at different times when they served, they would address particular problems that came up. Dr. Borchers would do that, and as a result, they would get those problems addressed. In some cases, people just wanted to just express an opinion as well. So there are different
Your
different
time
levels.
is up. Thank you. Ms. Mendel?
I'm hoping you all know how I stand on this. I feel that one of the problems we have right now is that people don't trust this board. This is nothing new. I've been to the last few board meetings, and I've heard patrons get up and talk, and then they sit back down, and that's the last that we hear of it. I don't know if a better way to handle this would be, you know, we understand your concerns, and someone's going to be in contact with you, or just a little bit brief dialogue with that person just to make that person feel like they're important. Because I think it's gotten to the point where people just don't feel like their opinion really matters.
Thank you, Ms. Mondel. Mr. Morrell?
The meetings I've attended, I had the same takeaway. It's why aren't these questions being answered? And I understand, for sake of time, for everybody that comes out and invests in this effort, that You know, you don't want to lose control of the meeting. All of those things I get, but there are ways around this. If you don't recognize that citizens could be, you know, taken aback by having questions unanswered, you have to come up with solutions or a plan B. And I don't know what plan B would be necessarily, but certainly my takeaway from those meetings would be better if those questions were submitted in advance and the top 5 or the top 3 based on timing could be answered in a public forum. And there are ways to do it so that the public doesn't feel ignored.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Strati?
With these patron comments, citizens walk in, we don't have the benefit of knowing what the questions are until we sit down for the beginning of the meeting. Many times there's probably much more research that needs to be done before we can actually give an answer. Most answers that we give, we want to make sure that they're accurate and that we know all sides of an issue, especially given if someone comes up and has an issue with a child issue, we want to make sure that their privacy is protected as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, as we prepare for final closing comments, I just want to give you a couple of general questions that folks were concerned about so you can think about that for your closing comments. They want to know what makes you qualified to serve. They want to know whether or not you believe in term limits. They want to know what actions you've taken to keep up with the changing problems in education and what you're going to do first to put the school board on the right footing. So with that in mind, I just want to make a couple of comments right before we start with these closing statements. And remember, we began with Ms. Strati. We're going to begin with Mr. Morell. But I want to thank all of you for asking really good questions. I'm sorry if I didn't get to everybody's question. We had about 80 of them. I tried to cover issues that I thought were most pressing. If you found this to be useful tonight, this is what the League of Women Voters does. We want to tell you a couple of things. First of all, if you are not registered, tomorrow's the last day to register for the April 2nd election in St. Louis County. Get folks to get there and to register. Remember, you don't have to drive all the way to Maplewood to go to the Board of Elections. You can go to any public library branch. So please tell people that. The second thing is look for our voter's guide, which is going to come out the Friday before the election. It'll probably be up on the web before that. I'm happy to say that every single one of your candidates has submitted their information to the voter's guide, and it has everything on your ballot. You can print out your ballot, see everything that's on it, and do that. If you think that these kinds of things are important, and clearly we do, we think we need information, we've got to go forward in this country at every level. Think about joining us at the League of Women Voters. You don't have to do a lot, but there are folks who can work a couple hours on the voter's guide, do a citizens forum. This work is really, really important, and it would be good if you could get involved. So the polls are open, as you know, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Your polling place might be a little different because it's a municipal election. Call the Board of Elections or call the League of Women Voters. We'll give you your polling place. Tell everybody to vote. So with that in mind, let's listen to these closing statements. Mr. Morell, you're first.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I have a passion for helping kids achieve. I also have a strong passion for eliminating public sector waste. And those two things together make me believe that the board could use a skill set that I am willing to bring. Term limits across all elected positions, absolutely. 100% agree. Keeping the board on the proper footing, I think it starts with treating the taxpayer money like as carefully as I treat my own. And that means a lot of things that are beyond 2 minutes, but that's really what I believe the district needs to be back on its right footing. I promised to talk about safety a little bit more, and I'll talk very quickly. There's a school shooting more than once a month in the United States. They all don't make the national news. When there is a shooter in Lafayette, according to a captain who's got all kinds of expertise that I can explain to you offline, says that the lockdown procedures are inadequate today to protect our kids. Lockdown procedures, if there's a shooter on floor 2, is that all the kids are locked in their classroom and they hide. That makes them sitting ducks and easy targets. They recommend, based on his experience in target hardening, which makes kids more difficult to shoot. Right now, when there is a shooter at a Chesterfield elementary or middle school, it's an 8-minute response time before they get there to start mitigating the challenges. In a school shooting for the past 35 years, there's a fatal shot fired every 15 seconds. Folks, do the math. Right now, there's one Rockwood police officer armed to cover 12 schools. That's not enough. And this is not a zealot who recommends, the Army at every place we've got. I'm not for arming teachers. I don't think we have, military and cops teaching science in our classes. We need these folks that do this full time. And I would be for a program that would put cops closer to these elementary schools. With compulsory laws in the United States to send kids to school, it's a matter of time before a parent of a hurt or killed child sues the public schools and wins. It's our obligation.
Thank you very much. Ms. Mondel.
Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters and for everybody coming out tonight. I have to admit I got in my car last night and drove to North Kirkwood Middle School and watched the candidates forum with the Kirkwood School Board because I wanted to know what was going to happen tonight. And I heard you speak about the fact that tonight was going to be the Rockwood Candidates Forum, and people in the crowd went, ah. And I thought, what? Why would they be saying that? Except for the fact that a lot of us have done that in the last few weeks as well. I am tired of the negativity in the press. I am tired of the fact that we are on the front page of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I believe in Rockwood. I believe in our kids. I believe in our teachers. And I think it's time to put someone on this board who is going to step up and try and make these hard decisions that we need to make. I believe in fiscal responsibility. I believe in looking at our budget very, very closely and trying to figure out how we can do these things that we all want to do. There have to be some ways. I'm also all about openness, and I'm a big believer in reconnecting our community. The average person right now in Rockwood probably doesn't know but a couple of the board members, and that's because of the bad press lately. I want people to know who your board members are. I want you to be able to approach board members. I want us to have to work together to fix this. I challenge each of you. This is going to take longer than 6 months. This may take a year or 2 years. But we all have to step up to the plate. We all have to do what's right for our kids. And so I'm asking you to please vote for me on April 2nd.
Thank you. Mr. Banton, you're next.
First of all, I believe that the Rockwood is a good school district and that it has gotten a lot of bad press. And there has been significant improvement in student achievement in the Rockwood School District. And there are a lot of things to be proud of in the Rockwood School District. The Rockwood School District has probably one of the has the highest rating when it comes to student achievement per tax dollar. The Rockwood School District, when it comes to cost per pupil, is one of the greatest values that people have in the district. It ranks, if you were ranking it by lowest, and you took into account the cost of living, it would rank in the top 20 when it comes to expenditure per pupil. At the same time, the use of funds has been, funds have been used wisely. There have been mistakes, but that does not mean, in every school district and every human being does make sometimes mistakes. And everyone acknowledges that, and we build from those mistakes. If we don't try things, then you never learn. In addition to that, what we need to do is, I believe in open and honest communication, and that means having hearings. That means allowing people to special sessions throughout the district where people can listen, where they can vent, where you can get input. And coming up now is going to be one of the most ideal times because we will be preparing a strategic plan for the next 5 years.
Okay, I think your time is up, Mr. Banton. Ms. Strati?
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and for everyone here for coming out on such a blustery evening to learn about all of the candidates. I hope that as you walk away and heard our responses tonight, that you can walk away with an open mind as you think carefully about your decisions on April 2nd. My areas of focus have been and will continue to be as follows. Number one, ensure that every student have the opportunity to learn to their fullest potential. Two, that our decisions should start with a focus on the students and the educational services that they receive. And then finally, three, we as a board should strive to create an environment that provides for the long-term financial security of the district while balancing the day-to-day operations. Thank you all for coming, and I think all of us appreciate all the questions that everybody asked. Thank you.
Okay, I think we ought to give them all a round of applause.